Hello and welcome to the Business of the Business podcast. I am your co-host, JP Jumpaz from the two-man power trip of wrestling. Of course, joining me is the wizard himself, my co-host, Mr. Trump Mania, Lavie Margolin. Lavie, how you doing today, sir?
Hey, I'm doing great. Another special day. We keep it rolling from Mexico City, and AAA to Brooklyn by way of San Francisco. Welcome in a special guest. Everyone already knows Kevin Gill. Kevin, welcome.
What an honor it is to be here, man. Thank you guys so much for inviting me to be here. It's truly an honor to be on one of the most important and insightful podcasts in the wrestling game. And I'm not saying that because I'm on your show. It's something I vague tweeted about before.
I caught that one.
You know what I'm talking about. You don't miss much, brother.
So, Kevin, just go back to the beginning as far as like, where did you grow up? What were you a wrestling fan of? Because, being in the Northeast, it's like, okay, I knew Hogan when I'm growing up in the 80s. I'm a WWF guy. Then I slowly develop and I become an NWA fan, like stuff like that. So, where'd you grow up and what were you a fan of?
Queens, New York, where I'm talking to you from right now, is where I'm from, and being the mecca, if you will, of professional wrestling. Growing up in the shadow of Madison Square Garden, in a city where wrestling results were printed in the local newspaper and things like that. Every newsstand was covered with wrestling magazines. It just and kids at school and all that, so it drew me right in. Uh, WWEF was the first stuff that I liked in that right when the Hogan era was beginning was when I truly got into it. And then once like the Hogan being kind of too goody goody or whatever, then I started discovering the NWA and Championship Wrestling from Florida, Bill Watts UWF, which inspired me as a very young child to write a letter to Jim Ross, who was the commentator, and I gave him a list of all these venues in New York City that the Bill Watts UWF could run at. And I wish I had the letter to this day, but he wrote me back saying that while they're always interested in running in New York, they don't have any concrete plans right now, but I should stay watching them on Tempo Television. So, and then from there, a few years go by, and then suddenly, interest in wrestling for myself died down, and the general public, it kind of died down in those early to mid 90s. And then thankfully, Paul Heyman and Todd Gordon and Tommy Dreamer and the whole ECW crew re-revolutionized wrestling, created the blueprint for what are the Monday Night Wars, and set the industry up to be where it is today. You know what I mean? And now I'm a little barnacle on that industry.
When you look at that, right? Like, okay, you're a fan, you're writing to Jim Ross, he's writing you back. How do you go from like being a fan to actually jumping into the business? Because it seemed like you had that aspiration, but how do you jump into the business and how do you get into the business?
Well, the first thing, so I was always really into music, wrestling, and video games. Those were my passions. And with wrestling, obviously, I was just super into it. But like you said, I'm a fan. From doing music, I ended up starting an independent record label, and that led to me meeting and knowing a lot of people. And there was a magazine out of Philadelphia. It was called All That Magazine, but it was later called Chord Magazine. But they knew how crazy I was with wrestling. Like I would put out hardcore records, but my ads would be a photo of like Pitbull #2 from ECW. I totally did weirdo shit. Like, and there was no crossover. Do you know what I mean? Like it was, I was really doing it for myself. But so how it started was that magazine, All That, uh, they gave me an opportunity to interview WWF or WWE wrestlers in their magazine. Like they were getting calls from WWE. They needed an interviewer that could handle wrestling interviews. So from that, I got to interview Classy Freddie Blassie, Too Cold Scorpio, uh, and others. I did one interview with Bill Alfonso that I arranged myself, which was like incredibly eye opening. But at that point, I'm still just an outsider. Like, it's cool that I can help promote wrestling and get these conversations with people. Like, I'll never forget being able to talk to Freddie Blassie for 90 minutes,
Awesome.
But that was just still like, I consider myself like a fan still. I'm just a fan and a tiny contributor, but super interested nonetheless. So then, same thing, some years go by, and I got a job at a fledgling video game company. And from doing that, it led to me making this video game called Backyard Wrestling. And when we started working on that, now I know, now suddenly I'm working with wrestlers directly. I'm calling them up. I'm traveling with them. I'm producing voiceover sessions and things like that for them. So from that, that led to the guys from Insane Clown Posse were characters in the game. And I would hang out with them a lot during these events and things that, press events and recording sessions. And they had told me, they were like, man, we thought we were the craziest wrestling fans ever, but we've never met anyone that was as knowledgeable and as passionate about wrestling as you are. And they're like, that includes us. So they're like, we have this idea. We want you to be the referee for our wrestling company. And I'm like, oh, but then I'm like, oh, of course, yeah, I'll do it in a minute. But then it started eating away at me. I'm like, oh no, like, have I misrepresented myself? Like, do they think I'm a ref or something, or do they think I train? Because I don't want to infringe on anyone or anything. And so I hit them back, and I'm like, I just want to be totally upfront. Like, I'm not a trained referee. I've never refed before, but I'm going to study tape for the next few weeks. I'm going to do everything I can do. And they were like, brother, you got this. And then I went and started refing for them. I got to ref for so many people with them, and guys like Vampiro and Madman Pondo helped me in the day before my first referee experience, an experience that saw me go to the emergency room as well. So I did pay my dues because I was cut accidentally and fairly seriously during my first match as a ref. And then from there, now I'm super around it. Now I'm reffing for people like Roddy Piper and Kevin Nash and Scott Hall and all these people. And there was a wrestler from where I lived at the time in San Francisco, a great young wrestler named DJ Riz had passed away. And me and Lars Fredrickson from Rancid got involved with his memorial show. And we hired a guy to film the whole show, and then we put it out on DVD. And me and Lars were the commentators. So that I'd only done commentary one time prior to that, and we did a backyard wrestling event at the E3 convention in Los Angeles, and we had like M-Dog, Matt Cross, and Super Dragon, and all these cool people wrestling. And they're wrestling for a video game industry crowd, a crowd of retail buyers and people that don't have any idea about wrestling. They don't know how to act or respond. So the match starts. I'm the ring announcer, and the match starts, and I'm standing there at ringside, and there's thousands of people watching, and I'm like, this feels like it needs something. Like, it's so quiet, and the crowd is just kind of watching. So I was like, it really needs commentary. So I had done it in the seats, obviously, a million times, but I had never done it over a mic or anything like that. So right over the PA, I called with no prep a 3-day wrestling tournament. So that was in the very early 2000s, but then I didn't do anything all this time, refereeing, all that. Then when I did this DJ Riz show, I brought it to the Insane Clown Posse guys, and we were in their recording studio, and I played it for them. And I started to feel embarrassed because I was like, I'm on camera a lot, and I'm talking so much, like I feel embarrassed, like, to be showing this to them now. And then after like halfway through it, they're like, all right, cool, turn it off. And I'm like, all right, cool, at least I got to show it to them. And then they were like, brother, we've been looking for someone to join our commentary team for the longest time to replace Violent J, and we've never been able to find someone. We tried out Raven, we tried out Scott D'Amore, we tried out all these people, but little did we know the person was already with us. And I'm like, who is it? Because I'm fucking stupid. And they're like, it's you, brother. So then they made me a commentator, and then I got to, I couldn't even tell you how many shows. We did a weekly pay-per-view series. We did shows in Canada and all over the US. And then from doing that, it started to become, well, who's booking this show? And then if you're booking the show, how are the talent getting there? Who's booking their flights? Who's booking their hotels? Who's coordinating everyone's travel and details and then paying them at the end of the night? So by the end of it, I even became a licensed promoter at one point just to be able to do all that stuff. And I feel like it helped give me an even better understanding and insight into wrestling, because from a super fan to being in various support roles to then like running and booking events and, doing the marketing campaigns and like directing what the flyers and the graphics and the posters would look like. So that was what got me fully into it. And then I've never stopped since then.
Nice. What are you up to today, wrestling wise? Are you doing anything currently, wrestling business?
Yeah, right now I'm very proud to be associated with Circle 6 Wrestling out of Los Angeles. They are a new upstart. They just passed their 1-year anniversary, and they've been running a myriad of shows all over the country, both a trio of shows, really. It's Circle Six Wrestling, which is its core product. There's Circle Six 7, which is like a cinematic deathmatch experience with live music. And then there's the Barroom Blitz, which is just no ring bar fighting. So it's kind of cool being able to go to a town and do like a no ring bar fight the one night, do a traditional show or a 7 show the next night. And they have a lot of cool stuff cooking with merchandising and, the technology platforms and all that. So that stuff's super exciting. And then I also work with Outlaw Wrestling here in Queens, New York. They run at the Queens Brewery. They also run in Brooklyn and some other places. And I've been getting to work with people like Crowbar and then to cross it over back to my New York hardcore days, like now Vinny Stigma from the legendary band Agnostic Front is a character in Outlaw Wrestling. So now I get to work again with one of my heroes for music, just like I did with Lars. And I mean, Vinny doesn't do commentary yet. Maybe that's something that'll come up soon. But that's where I'm working now, and I'm a free agent, so to speak. Like I'm available for anyone that's professional, that does business correctly, that takes care of their talents and all that. I'm currently available. Maybe someday I'll be lucky enough to say, like, oh, I'm sorry, I'll under contract to someone, because that is a dream. But for now, I'm just another scrub, another barnacle on the surface.
Now I know Lavie's got a bunch of questions for you. Lavie.
Yes, I'm just absorbing it all in. Kevin, the sound dropped off for a moment. I think it might be better now. So many questions. So first question, if you remember, what venues were you suggesting Mid-South use in New York?
Oh, like the Ridgewood Grove Arena, like all the venues that you would hear like in the local voiceover crawls for WWF. Because I knew, like, I had the sense and awareness that UWF couldn't come run at the Garden or the Nassau Coliseum. So I was trying to find venues that were like almost appropriate. You know what I mean? Venues that were already having wrestling, things like that. So it was basically a long list of all the smaller places, because WWF in those days used to run multiple shows a day, and it's crazy to think about now, but they would run in high school gym. I saw Roddy Piper and Paul Orndorff team up against the Invaders in Whitestone, Queens, at a high school gym in like 1984 or 5. And when you think of it's Roddy Piper. Like, why is he on a C show at a high school gym on a Thursday night? You know what I mean? But back then, WWF would run in college campuses. They would just run everywhere, especially in this Northeast, just to fill, or the tri-state area, even more specifically, just to, I guess, maximize revenue and to fill in every spot on the calendar. I got to see the Wild Samoans wrestle in that same high school gym in Whitestone. And then after like seeing a couple of WWF shows there, somehow Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling came to Whitestone, Queens, and ran a show headlined by Jimmy Valiant versus Abdullah the Butcher. And Jimmy Valiant was the first wrestler I ever went, because conveniently he was set up at a little card table the moment you entered the venue. And I'm just like, oh my God. He had this like giant wound, like this. It's hard to even explain it. It looked almost like if you just had a grape under your skin and it's all like red. It was just some giant, I guess, juice hole that he'd been working on for a while. But to meet Jimmy Valiant then and to see him versus Abdullah the Butcher, revolutionary shit for me. And it just blew my mind. Like, it still blows my mind to this day. Like, how did that show even happen? I asked Jimmy Valiant about it the last year, and he was saying that he had only wrestled in New York City a very few handful of times in his career, just those couple of Madison Square Garden shots that he did, and this high school gym in Queens, New York.
Yeah, I love that stuff. I have those big like record books, and like the covers are falling off it already because I use it so much. Old standbys. Thankfully, the second edition they made like the font a lot bigger. Like the first was like Wrestling Observer like font, so like
Yeah.
5.5.
Now, so you consider the Observer font bigger? I always would have, I'd be sitting on a plane or whatever. I was always I love the paper Observer. And just reading it on the plane, I would always wonder what people thought I was reading, because it's just this white paper just covered in words. And as long as you didn't see that front page that said Wrestling Observer, it just looks like you're reading some kind of a manifesto.
Probably. So, there's so many like different touch points of the business. So I'm sure we'll have to have you come back to one of those like old school shoot videos, right? Like, 'cause
Please,
there's so
yeah.
much information.
Any road stories, any ribs? Ha ha ha. I was going to ask you that in a minute. We do it that style, like ha ha ha. I was going to ask you that. Any road stories? Any ribs? Ha ha ha. Sorry.
As long as it's not something offensive like Ken Patera, like who was told not to ask about
Yeah, I'm not
the
here to
McDonald's.
talk about that shit. I just watched that. I'm a shoot interview disciple too. I didn't mention that, but in my quest for wrestling knowledge and fandom, like during that run of the shoot interview heyday, man, like I literally watched every shoot interview. I watched every in the ring with training videos, like literally anything that I could consume to hear these stories directly, to hear uh, the insight, the knowledge, all of that. I'm like a sponge with it, and I never get tired of it. When we got the green light to do the Backyard Wrestling video game, I thought to myself, I was like, man, this is crazy. Like, I'm gonna have to be working on wrestling stuff like 20 hours a day for like a year or more. I'm probably not gonna like wrestling anymore when it's done. It's just gonna be like, get me out of here. But meanwhile, I can work a 20-hour day, come home, and then to unwind, I put on a shoot interview. Do you know what I mean? It never, my zest for wrestling never diminished, whether I'm involved in working around the clock for a few years on it. It never, I never burned out on it. Like, I still love it just the same.
So I think one era, like sort of like, it's very hard, I think, like for like a promotion to really like break through. And one of the eras that you lived wasn't that long ago, which was the rise of GCW.
Oh yeah, it was a huge rise.
So how did you get involved in that? And like, when did you realize like there's really something here?
With GCW, like I was just aware of their buzz. Like at first they were JCW, and I think that's how I first became aware of them because I was running Juggalo Championship Wrestling for ICP JCW, and they were Jersey Championship Wrestling. And I always remember that fans on Twitter, you won't believe this, but they like to start trouble and be negative and shit. So I would get these negative tweets from people about either Jersey Championship Wrestling stole our name or we stole Jersey Championship Wrestling's name. And someone from whoever ran the JCW Twitter in New Jersey at that time, they had replied like, hey, they're doing their thing. We're doing our thing. There's no beef. There's no animosity. We're different entities. And that always stood out to me, like, because they could have just been like, oh, these idiots, these stupid clowns, whatever. But that just kind of made a good impression on me. And then, this was also like the very early viral era of Joey Janela. Like, was it Joey Janela and Jake the Snake Roberts? Like something with a porta potty. Do you remember this?
Probably the first time I became aware was that giant shed. That huge thing where like
yeah,
that was my introduction.
I'm trying to remember. There was some early. Maybe it wasn't Jake the Snake, but it was someone of that ilk, someone of that magnitude, and there was something involving a porta potty and an indie show with Joey Janela, and that was when Joey first got on my radar. And then I became a fan of Joey's, so I booked Joey to wrestle at the Gathering of the Juggalos. But then he did that spot with Zandig, the famous jump off the roof spot you were talking about, the giant shed, if you will, and he broke his wrist or whatever. So it delayed him debuting for ICP for like a year. But I then, I knew Joey and I was, in touch with him and stuff. So when I saw the announcement go out for the original spring break, and again, Game Changer Wrestling was not a big company. They weren't super well known. They didn't have some giant buzz. I just knew of them from the JCW stuff. I knew of Joey. And I saw their concept because they put out a press release of some sort just saying we're running a show at like midnight the Thursday before the WrestleMania weekend kicks off. And I was like, man, this is like so outside the box. It's like, this is something. Like these guys are onto something. If they can deliver it like they're laying it out here, this is something that I really want to be a part of. So literally the second they announced it, I hit up Joey Janela and was like, hey man, like, and I was doing commentary for ICP at the time, but I was like, is there any way I could do commentary or you would consider me for a part in this, whatever? And he's like, oh yeah, like call up Brad and we'll make it happen. So I got in touch with Brad and he was just like, oh yeah, we're going to have different people on different matches. So you're the first person, obviously, to come inquiring about it. So you can just pick any match you want. And I guess they had maybe rolled out a few matches by this time, obviously. So one of the matches they had announced, I always mess this up because they're real life couples involved, but then they were on different teams. It was some combination of, it was Andy Williams from Every Time I Die and his wife Cherry Bomb, who's the bunny from AEW. Oh no, sorry, I'm mixing it all up. Andy Williams is not married to the bunny. It was Andy Williams and maybe Penelope Ford against the bunny and the Blade. And I was a big fan of Pepper Parks and still am. I was a big fan of the bunny, aka Cherry Bomb, and I loved Andy Williams being such a luminary from the type of music that I liked. The idea of me calling an Andy Williams match was like, like I look at the card now and some people would say like, oh, why didn't you choose this match or that match? I just felt there was something really interesting in that, having crossover people from very successful bands wrestle in intergender tags. So that was my start with GCW. I went and called a match at the first spring break. And then the second year I came back, and I think I called more than one match the second year. But then the third year of spring break, I just called the whole show and then started working with GCW more regularly. And then it just kind of snowballed into just calling all the shows. And one note that I always so right around this time was the Nick Gage versus David Arquette match, the legendary match that happened in LA. And I always remember this because I'm there. I'm been there for hours, counting down. The show's getting closer and closer, and I'm like, "Hey, Brett, like, what matches am I calling?" Oh, don't worry about it. Like, we'll let you know or whatever. So I'm like, Jesus, like the show starts in like 1 minute, and I'm standing at Gorilla just to be visible, but I haven't been told anything that I'm doing. So DJ Z, who's now I always mess this up. Can you guys tell me who DJ Z is in WWE now? He's in that
Joaquin Wilde.
Yeah, Joaquin Wilde, and he's in that so to speak lucha faction. But Joaquin Wilde at that time was working the Indies, and inexplicably he was in the opening match against the great Sasuke. So I'm just standing there at Gorilla, and the talent goes up to Brett and is like, "Hey, can Kevin call my match, please?" And Brett's like, "You want him to?" And it's like, Jesus Christ, Brett, the guy's fucking asking. You know what I mean? Like, no, he doesn't want me to. So Brett's like, "Oh, yeah, if you want him to, sure." So then I'm like, so that's the first match. So as I'm walking out, Brett's like, "Oh, we're going to have other people join you, and then you'll come back, and you'll go back out." It's like a whole rotation of talent. So I get on the mic and introduce that. I'm like, "I'm the first of many voices that'll be like flowing through your ears and guiding you through this amazing event and all this stuff." But nobody fucking came out. So I just called the entire event by myself. One man, Joey Styles style. And then getting to do that Gage Arquette match, which was so legendary and so surreal to be calling and watching it, and watching David Arquette try to shoot on Nick Gage. Like the last thing you would ever think in a million years. Like, oh yeah, the actor's going to try to shoot on the deathmatch wrestler. But that's kind of how it all started. You know what I mean? And I had a great connection with the product and the fans, the wrestlers themselves. And I just felt like at that time, those guys had the rocket on their back, so to speak. Like I hadn't seen anything like it since ECW, which I was a huge fan of and got to be involved with as a fan. I also got to meet a lot of Paul Heyman and Tommy Dreamer and meet all those people because Rockstar Games, because of me, we negotiated with Paul Heyman to do the original ECW video game, and we ended up not doing it, but it still just kind of increased my worldview in a sense, because not only was I the world's biggest ECW fan, but I was able to like bring business their way or get them a deal memo. Do you know what I mean? Get them a contract on their desk, that sort of thing. So yeah.
So, of all the places that you've been, whether it's Circle 6, GCW, Cave and Rock, Illinois, where you ever said to yourself, "This is too much. This is too crazy.
Well,
I don't know if I should be here. I don't know if I can handle this."
On commentary, I've never felt that way. Like when I was reffing, like I remember one time I was reffing at Cave and Rock, Illinois, and Tracy Smothers, rest in peace. He was such a heel in the Juggalo world. Sorry, I never wear these stupid earbuds for a reason. Like even just sitting still, they just fall out of my ears at all times. But Sorry, I lost my train of thought.
Tracy
Oh yeah.
Smothers.
So I was reffing for Tracy Smothers at the gathering of the Juggalos, and he's just inciting shitting on the crowd, insulting them, and the crowd's throwing all the stuff at him. And I always remember someone threw a folding chair at him in the ring, and it didn't hit him; it just landed on the mat. And then he picked it up and just threw it like a discus. And I'm standing there, and I just watch it, and he throws it so far that you know how it is that the first 10 rows of standing, they're all watching what he's doing. But as you go further back, people are talking and doing different things. And I could see from where I was, like some random person just got hit in the face with this chair that's spinning like a discus. And then forget it. Then it's like bugs attracted to a light, except they're not bugs. They're rocks and coins and lighters and anything that anyone could throw. So I'm there in the ring, and we have a female ring announcer, and I'm trying to like put my body in front of hers. I also don't want to get hit with anything, but you know what I'm saying? I'm not going to let her get hit in the face with a rock or something. And I remember it was just insane. And then his opponent that night, I believe, was Booker T, just to make it even more surreal. And then someone, thank God, had the wherewithal to just hit Booker T's music. And Booker T just came out, basically gave him the axe kick, and just 1, 2, 3. But being in that moment, I was like, I don't want to lose an eye. You know what I mean? Those are the kind of things I would always think of.
Yeah, no, and it's funny because that was the story I was going to ask you about. So it's funny that it ends up being the craziest one. Now,
I saw so many things there, man. I saw Brutus the Barber Beefcake one time. I believe it was Necro Butcher took out of this lake that was next to the ring. I mean, I don't know, a 4-foot long fish. I don't even know what it was, but like gigantic. And Necro just swung it like a bat, and it exploded like a prop. You know what I mean? It just was all guts and gore and everything everywhere. And I was like, holy shit, what a spot. And holy shit, I can't believe Brutus Beefcake agreed to do that. That just seems crazy. So then I get in the back after the match, and I see Brutus is covered in fish guts. And I said something, just about, oh, that was crazy, or I can't, something just putting over, like kind of, I can't believe you did that, but how awesome it was that you did. And he's like, where is that fucking guy? Like he had no idea that he was going to get hit with the fish, and he was not happy about it.
So Kevin, I on Twitter talking to you, it's all about the positivity. But a question that a lot of people have in their minds is, you were Mr. GCW. Obviously,
Yeah.
that ended. You're very busy now. So what do you feel comfortable sharing, and are there any hard feelings?
Well, it's funny. Like, this is something I never really addressed in any interviews or anything like that, and it's sad in a way. Like, it hurts a lot, and I think you're seeing it now. Like, you're seeing. At first, it was just like, oh, it's just Smart Mark Video that can't get along with Brett, and then it's just Ricky Shane Page, and it's just Eric Ryan. Well, now it's and Kevin is a problem, and now Alex Colon is a problem. It kind of makes you wonder, like, are all of us the problem, or is the problem something else? So for me, GCW was something that I loved wholeheartedly. I gave my heart and soul to. I worked a lot behind the scenes with Brett and putting stuff together and the logistics of events and anything I could do, basically, because I truly felt like this was something we were doing. Like, we are the revolution. But at the end of the day, like, the thing is, like, my issue with, I guess I don't have a definitive feeling in the end, because I have an unresolved issue with GCW in that I'm owed money by GCW, and I haven't spoken about that. And I've given, to say I've given a myriad of time. This goes back to the summer and fall of last year, that I was inquiring about this money, needing this money. I was about to move back east, and I was in a tough situation for life, like unknown, moving back from San Francisco, moving back to New York. And then you just kind of get that wake up call of like, oh, like, no one matters at all. Everyone's interchangeable. Commentary doesn't matter. And, as anyone who watches wrestling, like, I've been watching the A&E biography stuff and all that. every fucking moment is punctuated by the goddamn fucking commentary. Those are part of the moments. And to me, you have this massive rise. You have an enthusiastic voice that's part of the presentation and part of the core product that believes everything they're saying, that's like an ambassador for the product. To me, it's weird to kind of cut their throat or step on them over ego, over greed, over semantics, whatever it might be. But then, business is business. So the friend side of me, like the brother side of me, is like, you want to see your friend get his head out of his ass, do the right thing, make things right. But then every day that passes, you realize, like, wow, this person literally wakes up every day knowing the situation. They even put out kind of like they put out a thing that I had signed a contract with them during this time, which I thought was just mean spirited, and it affects my ability to get work and things like that. So it's really hard for me to fully understand it all. But I can say that because this is a business and people make agreements and there's terms to those agreements, I'm happy to go to use the resources available to all people when they need to resolve matters. You know what I mean? There's a pretty clear-cut matter between myself and GCW, and I find it horrific that they've done nothing to address it and just kind of left it like wink, wink. And, they'll tweet stuff like, oh, Kevin can come by and do commentary and stuff like that. And it's kind of, I think it's misleading, and it's in bad form considering what I contributed and whatever. And again, even if though I did a lot behind the scenes and whatever, I'm still a small part of the overall thing. The talent to me is always paramount. And, seeing that talent sometimes be utilized to their maximum and just explode in a crescendo of wrestling greatness, there'd be just as many people that you'd be like, why is this person sitting home every weekend? Like, they're one of our core guys. Like, why don't we book them? You know what I mean? And now we're seeing more and more of that stuff kind of unfold, because wrestlers, like commentators, they're very loyal. But the old saying is, like, listen when someone tells you who they are. Because if someone tells you that you're of no value to them, that you, that they have no friends, that they don't believe in loyalty and all that, believe them. Because if you don't believe them, you can kind of end up getting caught out there. And I think as the list of wrestlers and production people and etc. that were a part of it and aren't a part of it anymore, all usually rather suddenly and or over the same kind of core issues, it's to me, it's just a sad state of affairs, and it's a blemish on what would be otherwise a truly incredible and revolutionary thing. And a lot of people say to me now, and time will tell, they could be totally wrong, but time will tell. But it feels like that run, coincidentally, that couple of year run when I was doing commentary for GCW was the rise of GCW. It was all up, and then there was kind of the major misstep at Hammerstein Ballroom that happened, and then it was back to smaller rooms and all that, and then you just wonder, like, what is going on here, and then what will be thought of this era? Do you know what I mean? And it's not to say that they don't. They still draw people in many markets. Obviously, there's people who tune in to watch their shows on Fight, but long gone are the days of trending on Twitter during the Olympics and during a UFC fight and stuff like that. And now it's a lot of there's like 900 tweets about this topic, so it makes it into a for you trending Twitter list sort of thing. So, yeah, I mean, I would just like I said, I've never spoken about any of this publicly, and I've barely spoken about it privately, but it is overall just disappointing, and I hate that I have to be put into a situation where I have to, like, resort to, business means to handle what shouldn't need to be escalated to that level, because you're friends. You're supposed to be friends. You're supposed to be brothers through all this. So to me, in the end, it was very hurtful. And it was at a time where, my girlfriend was spending a lot of time here in New York with her dad, who was sick at the time. I'm just sitting alone home in California, like dying to work, dying to do shows, not booked for Japan, not booked for England, not booked even for LA. And it just becomes like, I don't know. If you want to fuck me first, you got to kiss me, right? Like, you can't shit on my head and tell me that it's raining. So that's kind of like how I feel. And it's weird because I truly love Brett. I considered him a brother. There was times, at least one time I could think of, where there was an incident where someone was kind of within a hair of like physically attacking Brett during an event. And the only person, and you know, think of it, all those people he pays, all the people who work for him, all his friends, the only person who stood up and got in the person's face and put himself in between Brett and the attacker was me. Do you know what I mean? And then, but in what would he do the same? I don't know. I used to think that I could tell you that answer in a minute. Like, Brett's my brother. He would do for me what I do for him. We're all in this together. But even just seeing last night, like Alex Colon announced that he's joining XPW, which would seem to mean that he's not in GCW anymore. And if you read Alex Colon's tweets over the last bunch of days, it's like, it sounds like what they did to me, where, you know what I mean? Alex said, touched on all the same things, like loyalty, friendship, honor, remembering who was there for you, remembering who helped build stuff. But I don't know. I guess Alex Colon got the okey doke too, just like Nate Webb and everybody else. But to me, it's just weird because it's a small business, it's a small world, and you're much better off just treating people fairly, being honest with people, and not scumbagging people over money or perceived status or whatever. And I guess my closing thought on it was, one thing that was really weird was things seemed to really turn, like when fans really made it clear that they associated me with GCW, they associate my voice with these calls and these matches, that it then became a concerted effort to, well, we're going to show you fans that you're wrong. We're going to have Kevin do match 1 and match 4 and match 7, and then we're going to do a whole program that he calls the whole program, but then the blow-off match, we'll just take him off commentary right as the match is starting, and things like that. And I would explain, like, hey, whatever you want to do, but when I'm all fucking hyped up like that, it's very hard to then just be like, and stop, and now sit here for 25 minutes, and now get hype again, and now sit back for 40 minutes, and then get hype again. It's just, to me, it's counterproductive, and but it's a one-man show in that regard. Like, at the end of the day, whatever Brett wants to do is what Brett's going to do, and that's what Brett's doing now. Like, and one other note was that, like, when I started, that was a big part of my pitch to Brett, was that you guys have this awesome show and this awesome product, and every show just has some random ass commentators on it. They're never the same people. Some of them aren't even talking about what's happening. Why don't you have commentators, like an actual commentator that's your commentator, and it's, oh, blah, 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 blah. So then I became that person, but then now the great Dave Prazak kind of holds that role. But it's interesting because Brett didn't even seem to really believe in commentary enough to even have commentators on a regular basis before I got involved. So it's just weird. The whole thing is very weird to me. And obviously it's sad, it's disappointing, it's hurtful. I'm a sensitive person at the end of the day. You know what I mean? And when you live and die and bleed and do everything for the team, it's always an incredible wake-up call when it's like, oh, you're not on the team at all anymore just because I decided this, or I'm going through whatever personal issue and I'm going to take it out on you, sort of thing. Like, I always believed in the team, I believed in the brand, and I believed in building something completely revolutionary. Do you know what I mean? But I don't know. I think Hammerstein was a real turning point because, I mean, I'm sure you guys were there. If you weren't there, you watched it on TV. Like, the crowd just literally fucking died because of the booking. Like, they literally died. All the air got taken out of that building, and instead of being the jump off for a whole new era and a new height of GCW, it just kind of became, I don't know, it became something else in a way. You know what I mean? I was the guy who was telling them for weeks, like, you can't book a guy like Jeff Jarrett and expect that he's just going to come in and do a job. You know what I mean? You have to, that's part of the booking. Like, hey, we want you to come in and lose to this person and we'll pay you X. That's how you do business. But I was, LOL, you worry too much. We got this. And in the end, what they got was They got worked by a worker. I mean, it's got between that, and then the same later in the show, they did the whole build up for Alley Cat, where Alley Cat finally is going to get the big win on her own terms, on her own home fed against the outside star. And then guess what? Brett tries to step on Tony Khan's toes, and Tony Khan is then like, okay, guess who's not doing the job on Hammerstein? It's Ruby Soho. Do you know what I mean? So all your people lose on your show. The crowd is deflated and dead. And the Google trends leading up to that show were incredible. And then when the show ended, GCW didn't trend again on Google Trends for the remainder of the year, which is crazy. It shows you that there's this fervor, there's this feeling like people are buying into it. The fuse is lit, like we're changing everything. And then people get up their own ass about booking and stuff. And then all of a sudden it's like, what the fuck just happened? Why didn't we just run? All we had to do was run a regular show. You know what I mean? A regular GCW show is awesome. It has everything. People rave about it. So why not just do that in a bigger venue? You know what I'm saying? You can add a star if you want, but it just kind of, it's seemingly is becoming something else. You know what I mean? And I am not the only one, I think, who's a fan of a lot of the wrestlers that made it happen, that are all mysteriously gone and not mentioned and not spoke about, and etc.
Appreciate you being comfortable and sharing that. I think that's been, a question for those that have been following the business and the rise of GCW and its current position for a while. And very glad that most recently, 800,000 people or so got to see your work with Outlaw Wrestling and on Rolling Stone. But let me turn it over to John.
How crazy is that?
So what's next for you, and basically where can everybody find you?
Well, what's next for me, hopefully, is this albatross around my neck since last summer, and the money's owed to me could just be paid. So, and I could just move on in good faith. In other words, hey, if we had a few good years and that's all it is, well, it is what it is. I'm grateful for the memories, but it's kind of a stick in the eye to try to fuck me on my way out. Do you know what I mean? When I never did anything wrong, never stole a thing, never misrepresented the company, never used my connection with the company to fuck girls or get drugs or whatever. I'm there. And again, I'm not saying if you try to buy me a beer or give me a joint that I'm not going to take it. I certainly will. But you understand what I'm saying? Like, I'm not there on some hard shit, but I'm just, I'm a team player, and I'm available to work. Like Circle 6 keeps me really busy. Outlaw, we do at least one show a month, but you can find me on all social media at OG Kevin Gill, and PMA, positivity is the name of the game. And it's like, what world we live in, and coming out of the surviving through the pandemic era and kind of now being in this new era, sometimes you got to just find the positive side of things, or find a positive perspective to grasp onto, both for fandom purposes and for life purposes. You know what I mean? Because we only get one go at it. You know what I mean? So I just want to keep calling wrestling. I want to keep contributing. I appreciate so much that a company like Circle 6 sees me as someone who's like, what? Like Kevin Gill sitting home? Are you fucking crazy? Let's get this guy in front of a camera. Let's have him shoot vignettes. Let's have him cut promos. Let's have him do commentary. Let's have him be our ring announcer. Let's have him help us behind the scenes, because he's so underutilized. You know what I mean? And that's so flattering to me, because in wrestling, you're kind of only as good as someone else sees you, and it's how the booker sees you. So if the booker sees you as commentary, schmomentary, then you're never going to be good enough. Do you know what I mean? But if people see like, wow, this guy really contributes a lot, and if you see how I interact with fans and how I deal with fans at events and stuff, and whether it's helping them find their seats or taking pictures with them, or, you know what I mean, whatever has to be done. Like, I come from the DIY scene of putting out records, putting on concerts, and it is, in the words of Sick of It All, it's us versus them. And when it's us versus them, you can always count on me. And I wish I could say the same for everybody, but I think most people are on that same page. We are the underground, where most of us we're broke. We're starving artists, so to speak, whose passion and dedication to this art form. For me, I watch all these people, like everyone, it seems like I watch on AEW or WWE or wherever, I've called matches for them. Do you know what I mean? Because they're all they all were on the rise, and now they've risen to the biggest companies in the world, and now they rise within that to get to the top of that structure. I'm still here just trying to rise. You know what I mean? Just put everybody over and do the best I can. So it's something I hope to continue to keep doing. GCW has a great locker room, just like Circle Six, just like other companies. And I'd like to see everyone thrive and survive and do well, but I'd like to see everyone do it the right way and don't, man, like I've been in business a long time and it's like it's never a good idea to fuck over the people that helped make you, like, because when you can just part on good terms, that means the door's always open to anything. Do you know what I mean? Like there's people who've called me up in the last month that are people that I dealt with in business like 15 years ago and haven't talked to since. But the fact that I did good business with them then made a door open to be like, hey, are you available for this? Or hey, I was thinking, what about this? So in the end, I just hope everything is resolved, because it just feels really shitty to put me through this, quite frankly. But regardless of that, I'm gonna keep grinding. This weekend, I'm gonna go celebrate my love of wrestling at the '80s Wrestling Con in New Jersey. I want to get my Tito Santana autobiography signed and a few other things. So I'm just gonna keep doing my thing. And some people respond much more to social media or interviews or whatever. So who knows? Maybe I'll get, maybe everything will be resolved as a result of me speaking about it. And in which case, all's well that ends well. Fair is fair. I can't make anyone want to work with me, but it feels like through the legal system, I can certainly make you pay me the money that you fucking owe me. It sounds so stupid. Why? The fact that I'm still talking about it publicly for the first time. I've been talking about it privately for a long time. This started like last September. It's fucking May. You know what I mean? But what are you going to do? I'm going to keep going and just keep doing my thing. And I can't thank you guys enough for giving me a platform and an opportunity to connect with other people that are interested in this business and people that like to do business, be a pro. Way better than being a hoe. Although, you know, hoes have some fun too.
Good point. But Kevin, thank you so much for all the time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks,
I can't
Kevin.
thank you guys enough, man. Thank you.
Take care.
Take care, Kevin. Thank you. All right, and let's talk a little bit about the news as we break off and talk about Wembley. Just want to talk about the 50, maybe 60,000 tickets that were sold, AEW, and what's going on with the Wembley perspective.
Yeah, so this is like wrestling today, right? Like 34,000 initial seats from the signups, and it was controversial. ESPN reporter getting blasted out by Tony Khan by saying the setup was 40,000. Ultimately, it was proven more than that very day. But now we're more than 50,000 tickets deep, and there's the question of how far can it go? It seems like with the pre-sales that things start slowing down, because like the most hardcore fans have gotten their tickets, so about 10,000 more sold since then. So can they get? It doesn't look like they had at the moment cut off any seats that we're aware of. Like when you looked at the ticket map, it looked completely open. So maximizing that was, I think, Anthony Joshua, Vladimir Klitschko, or maybe Tyson Fury, Dylan White recently did 94,000 there. The promoter was even talking about up to 100,000. So as of right now, I don't think that's where they'll go. Who knows? They'll surprise us and like be like, this person is gonna come out of retirement or something and blow it out of the water. But, I think they're going to do really well, maybe around 70,000, but never count AEW out. At their biggest shows, they seem to really pull it out.
It's funny, the attendance here is awesome. I mean, this is unbelievable. Like the numbers are going to do, and maybe you add in like a Sting match, or maybe Goldberg appears. Obviously, Punk is probably going to be on it. Omega, obviously. I mean, you have some big chances for some big cards here. Who knows if Drew McIntyre's a free agent? Maybe he pops up, and you really send it off the rails and do a big card. But it's funny, the people watching at home, they're not watching it on TV, but they'll see it in person. Is that weird?
So I think like we didn't have the chance with a great guest just now, but like one of the things I was going to mention was what does like mainstream mean, right? Like, wasn't Insane Clown Posse mainstream I don't think so.
Yeah.
There was an awareness mainstream certainly, but not necessarily fans. But you can get 40,000 people to this remote location in Iraq, all right, to go and party and like so to bring like the niche together. I think people that are like on the fringe or like niche are more willing to travel to a special event than something that's like not unique, right? Like you're like pro basketball. Okay, yeah, it's going on in every city. I can see that, but like a comic book convention, like the biggest one of the year, or like a video game gathering, wrestling that the fans are willing to travel because you want to be like people like you, and it's a special occasion. But I don't think that means mainstream, and that's why it doesn't translate to viewers because it's not like sometimes you'll say like X amount of people are there in person, so multiply that by 100x, and that's the viewers. That's not really the case because when it's a special in-person event, the niche will travel to be there, but that doesn't represent like that can't be multiplied, extrapolated out for the public.
Yeah, very interesting though. Like it's just crazy. Like the amount of tickets. You're like, yeah, no, they're not going to get that many. Then it's like 50. Then it could be 60. Then it could be 70. I mean, just awesome for them and just an amazing crowd that they're going to have on hand in Wembley for sure. I mean, that's just crazy because, like you said, for the boxing, I mean, they're fitting 90 to 100,000. Man, it's just even crazy to think of 60 or 50,000. It's just nuts.
Yeah, unfortunately, some people are like, well, they'll take, they'll take a picture of like the section that they close off or something like that, and say, hey, look, like, they didn't sell out, but maybe they will. I think it'll be it's obviously already very special, but interesting to see A, what happens, but B, the narrative.
But what is going on the latest with Stardom?
Yeah, so just a little piece from President Harada, and then Post Wrestling had transcribed it. Sort of, we're always looking at like what's going on with Stardom, especially as a growing company, doing some things in the U.S. So for 3 years, because of coronavirus, they intentionally didn't put themselves out there. But now that things are moving along, they really plan to be more aggressive, placing themselves with some of the New Japan Strong shows, which I think like isn't always. The best idea. I think actually they probably do better standing alone because there's some people that are like just into Stardom. Um, but interestingly, that President Harada said that half of the viewers of Stardom World are from overseas, and that in terms of their streaming, they're doing everything right now alone. So it puts them at risk, which is really interesting because, especially internationally, you have so many streamers that would love to have Stardom attached right to what they do, from a fight to Premiere to Pro Wrestling TV and on and on. But we've seen, even with Noah and other companies like that, some of the Japanese companies seem to like to do it sort of like alone. They'll do a little bit of business in terms of like you could buy an iPay-per-view or something like that, but they seem to like their own thing, even though it comes with risk.
So with Stardom, I know it seems like I don't know, are they getting more popular, or less popular? It felt like they were getting more popular, and then you kind of throw Mercedes Moné, Sasha Banks into the mix. I feel like they're really at a height for their popularity right now.
Yeah, no, they definitely are growing. Brandon Thurston, whenever his reports come out, it really shows like in terms of like Google searches and interest, and their attendance is relatively small compared to New Japan, but in terms of its growth, so like it's hard to be a pro wrestling company with momentum and growth. And in the last few years, they've definitely shown that. There's always been like a little bit of like underlying like at least from the American perspective, like understanding what it is, just because like it doesn't always translate well. Like, sometimes people would think about the outfits and they'd be like, like who is this intended for? Like, what's going on here? But I think for the most part, it's gotten past that, and people are just focused on, the wrestling and the performers, and certainly somebody like Mercedes Monet, who has the option of going literally anywhere in the world, wants to affiliate herself with them, and that just shows their position and their growth over the years.
What is the latest on MLW on Fight Plus?
Yeah, so I feel like having Mike Weber on, and when we brought up MLW, on Fight, like, he was so positive about it, of trying to like make a deal, and that they were interested. And lo and behold, a lot of media shakeup for MLW, but their premium live events are now exclusive on Fight Plus. I think that's a great win-win. I don't, know any of the financials involved, but there's, as we've talked about, there's just a few companies where people like nationally and internationally have their eye on and are interested in talking about, that have broken through beyond WWE and AEW. And everyone is always like curious what's going on with MLW. But I think it's hard to sell standalone pay-per-views for smaller companies these days. So here, it's a great win for everyone, because you could bring the eyeballs and interest to MLW, but there's not that same risk of like having to do a pay-per-view and hoping for a decent buy rate. Here, people are already on Fight Plus from GCW and everything else that they're doing with boxing and MMA and grappling and so on. So you're in this niche ecosystem, but one that's seemingly proven successful thus far.
What happens with like Vice and BN and Reels, all this other stuff? So MLW is just going to be Fight, or is that just for the big shows?
Okay, so interestingly, so there's, Vice is in the past, except surprisingly, I saw in the Observer as we record this today, they still owe money to MLW, right? Talking about, allegations or information about companies owing money one to another or so on, that it, Vice, which is going to file for bankruptcy apparently, that for that one special that MLW had, I mean, besides they were doing reruns, so I don't know if they were paid for that, but for that one special, apparently, they owe MLW money. So maybe MLW avoided a problem, in the end, if they had committed to Vice of producing a weekly show or multiple specials. If they got behind on payments, look what happened to ECW of not receiving pay-per-view payments. It actually might have put them in a more difficult position. So that's one thing. Another interesting thing is that they must have a great relationship with BN Sports, where BN maybe said, come back to us when, if you're ever available in the future, because look, it ended with, with their current, the season ended with Reels, and then suddenly the next announcement was that they're back on BN. We were trying to understand that with Fusion, when that was announced, Reels was being tagged and so on, but they're back on BN. One of the things people forget about is that they're also on BN Sports Extra, which is a digital tier station, something that only we talk about a lot probably in the world of pro wrestling, but it's theoretically on in about 25% of the country, 42 affiliates, potentially 76 million homes. Of course, most people don't have digital antennas and so on, so they're not picking this up over the air, but it adds an extra layer because you talk about being having limited distribution. But this brings them back to Fight. I'm not sure if there was ever a discontinuation there, but they're on Fight. They'll be back on weekly with YouTube, so they'll have that. So I think, Reels, if you were to compare how's this week for MLW versus 3 weeks ago or 12 weeks ago or whatever, that obviously at the start of the Reels deal, that seemed like, a big breakthrough. Here it's, this piece, that piece, that piece, that piece. Hopefully it leads to a greater whole, especially as it relates to, revenue and so on, which, is the name of the game in any business.
What about your favorite promotion? Wow, what's going on with them?
Yeah, John, and you're keeping me up to date with the latest. I've yet to be added to their PR list, but John has that access, so I get the latest. People forget about it. I think it was the summer, right, or maybe the summer previously. Time moves quickly. That Defy was on the wrestling channel on Pluto, and then then it switched over to a general sports station, a fighting station. So now they had a couple Pluto specials. So interestingly, like they had it, but curious to see what happens, because with Defy, obviously, however it went, and clearly there are some technical issues, that there was never one again. So I think the question is, do we see more WoW specials?
So, what is going on with New Japan and maybe even the Resurgence show that's coming up?
Yeah, Long Beach, California. So loading it up, although it's a little bit late in terms of like promotion and planning for people that would travel, but Mercedes Monet now. Uh, Now you have the biggest, big star from AEW coming along, Moxley, of course. But I'm looking at the ticket sales map, and it's the way they have it. It's not Ticketmaster, so you can't see the whole thing at once. But it might also be like a price issue. But in one section, even around the ring, I see first row. So like one of the four sections, I see first row, second row, third row, fourth row, fifth row, sixth row, and so on. So I mean, a lot of cheaper tickets were sold too, but I don't know if it's going to be the same thing as we saw, 5 or 6 hours down the road in California with Mercedes Monet's first appearance with New Japan.
What is going on in Australia? What's going on with Australian pro wrestling?
So, just an interesting point and actually perspective. Like when we talked about a couple of weeks ago with the World is a Vampire Tour, it's sort of, my perspective was that, like, okay, there's some matches in between sets, and that's okay. But from the Australian perspective, an article written out of Australia, it gave me a different perspective because it's the first, like, when the big shows come, and we've seen that with WWE, especially occasionally over the years, and some other tours that they do well. But for the talents that are there, it's still very much like a growing thing, pro wrestling. So just the opportunity for them to wrestle in front of 60,000 people, even if it wasn't the primary reason or the primary draw, like that resonates, and that's important.
What's going on with GCW? Because Bamboozle's canceled, but then they got a bunch of other stuff coming up. So, what's the latest with GCW?
Yeah, so hopefully with the Bamboozle Fest in your area, Atlantic City, unfortunately being canceled, they're planning to do 3 shows. So hopefully they got like a down payment beforehand before going through all the trouble, because it was going to be a great win-win, because you had um, shows which are guaranteed, so you don't have to worry about ticket sales, and then they were going to be able to run all 3 on Fight Plus as well. So that's a shame, but a mixed bag in terms of upcoming events. Some are doing really well, and others, a little bit slow going. So I'll be able to report after I go to the Brooklyn show, my return to GCW. They're looking really good in Vegas, the Atlantic City events to start the year and finish the year always do well. The one summer, excuse me, always do well. But in a place like Ohio, it's a little bit slow. But interestingly, Zack Sabre Jr., besides coming to New York, is going to be in LA. So we'll have to see. There's sort of a show by show, as we talked about, sort of more the interview segment of this episode, that things in terms of live events don't have the same momentum they once did. Some do well in terms of those shows, and others may struggle at times.
So, when is the one show in Brooklyn that's on the 11th?
Yes, so
Oh, it's
that's
a Thursday
coming up
night. Wow.
on the 11th. I'll be coming from a big meeting in Midtown Manhattan, unrelated. So I'll be there in my suit, in a jacket and tie. So if anyone's watching on the stream, I'll have to ask Luis Perez if he watches or can get a screenshot, because I'll be in the second row to see if I'll be there. Brett recently tweeted out a picture from the Hammerstein, and I was like, I think I could find myself. So I spent not a ridiculous amount of time, but a little bit of time, and I did find myself and retweet it with a little arrow from the floor.
Nice. What's up with Premiere? They're adding in our buddies at MKW and
Yeah,
Catalyst. Our 2 buddies.
yeah. Look, all of our friends, although Premier maybe wasn't thrilled with my analysis of their standing thus far, right? A little jokes on Twitter back and forth, but we're so happy that our friends at MKW and Catalyst Wrestling have been asked. I mean, a question that stands out, right? Like, is they signed a deal, and I guess that was sort of like a big hint, right? It had been listed, I think, as 13 shows with MLW internationally. So they had actually told us without telling us how many episodes there would be in season 1 before it was announced. But you would think that that would open the doors to domestically working with MLW, but MLW went with Fight. So maybe we'll learn a little bit more about that in the future.
What about some sponsorship maximization?
So there's always the talk in pro wrestling of like using the ring apron and the ring curtains, and Vince McMahon historically has been against that. Although now we see like the pitch black match and so on. So things are changing in that regard. But uh, listener, Cubs fan from the Lucha blog and wonderful transcriber, appreciate what he did in terms of our interview last week, had a great picture from like above the ring of CMLL, just advertising Soul. I'm not sure if that's a drink in Mexico or whatever. It just looked cool. It reminds me of like, I loved like when USWA used to air and it'd have like Renegade Rampage on the ring apron as well. So I think it's like an underutilized revenue source that we may just start seeing more of, especially in WWE. I don't know, Tony Khan's thoughts on that, or if there's a need specifically to do something like that.
What about some indie quick hits? What do you got?
Yeah, so quickly, Limitless Wrestling. Always love to see the local TV. Kept the list for a while. I'll probably have to update it at some point, but they're on TV in Portland, Maine. So at the PMC channel. So nice to see those like local roots. Why not? XPW signed Tessa Blanchard for a number of dates. I don't think it's like an annual contract as far as I understand, but it's probably a fit right now. Tessa has had to manage outwardly what seems like a lot of issues that she's brought on herself in terms of comments and interactions with others, at least what we were hearing about publicly. We don't have the specific proof of that and so on, but XPW is sort of like an outpost right now in the world of wrestling, where if you feel people have the right to work and earn a living, this is somewhere where they can go. People are always like looking at it and saying like, I can't believe that they signed this person. Well, what else do you want them to do? I'm not justifying anything, but like, they're looking for the best way to market themselves as this re-emerging brand. Here, there's a fair amount of wrestlers that may have trouble finding work elsewhere, but have big name value. So I think, at least at this point, it's a win-win for all. And finally, and this was pretty shocking, hopefully I'm not mixing up the brothers, right? So it's not Robert Fuller that was Tennessee Lee, but the more of the promoter side, and former wrestler Ron Fuller is actually coming out of retirement in Rocky Top, Tennessee, one of my favorite songs. And he's actually teaming with Mike Jackson. So I'm not sure who's older. And Bunkhouse Buck, Jimmy Golden, is also on the card. So this is absolutely a fascinating card to me, given the location and the promotion. And then on the poster, there's two wrestlers that are tag team named Turdy and Dookie. So I'm just, if this was on Fight or something, I feel like I'd have to order it just for like, it just sounds so fascinating. And on the poster, and not saying it's a good idea, I'm just reporting on what I'm seeing on the poster. The logo actually uses the stars and bars, which obviously is a lot more acceptable for a local promotion in the South than a national promotion or anywhere else in the US these days. So it's just like this conflation of unique things, which sort of makes the indies so fascinating and something that we all want to follow.
Absolutely. So that is a lot of news. We had a great guest to start it off, but a lot of news to kind of encapsulate the fans this week. So let's head towards the plugs. You follow me on Twitter and Instagram at 2Man Power Trip. Check the website, tmptempire.com. Lavie, what do you got?
Yeah, follow me on Twitter, Lavie Marg, LAVIE-MARG. Check out my long-form articles, LionCubJobSearch.com, and stay tuned to the program. The big wheel keeps turning. A lot of potential guests upcoming. We hope everything goes as smoothly as we expect with all of these upcoming schedules. Otherwise, some great news ahead.
All right. Good stuff. Lavie, as always, thank you, everybody, for listening. We'll see you right back here next week for a little business of the business. We'll see you next week, folks.